What if one country could feel like Caribbean energy and rugged Andes at the same time? That country is Venezuela. And once you see how its land shaped its history and its food shaped its culture, you'll start to see the pattern. Start with the map. Venezuela sits on South America's Caribbean coast, where the Andes meet vast plains. Mountains line the west and north, squeezing people into valleys and coastal cities. Venezuela is so rich with hot lowland plains, tepuis and rainforests and rich fishing waters. That geography bred frontiers and tight-knit towns. Around 500 BCE, the Arawak, Carib, and Tomoto Cuica peoples thrived in this land, engaged in trade, farming, and craft. They thrived along the Caribbean coast, the Andean mountains, and the Orinoco River. Spanish ships reached the coast in 1498. Spain's mainland colonization began in 1502. Cumana became the first permanent South American settlement. By the 1520s, towns and missions spread along the Caribbean rim. Conquest followed, raids, encomienda labor, and missions. Indigenous resistance reshaped frontiers. Cacao exports boomed. Colonial rule relied on encomiendas, enslaved Africans, and frontier missions. In 1810, Caracas formed a junta. Francisco de Miranda's tricolor became a rallying flag. From 1811 to 1823, Venezuela underwent a brutal, transformative war of independence against Spain through the decisive Battle of Carabobo under Simon Bolivar, securing independence. Afterward, Caudillos contested power. The Federal War, 1859-63, reshaped provincial and central authority. Caudillismo persisted, Pius's dominance, then Guzman Blanco's centralizing, secular, modernizing reforms in the 1870s. Under Juan Vicente Gómez's 1908-35 dictatorship, a predominantly agrarian nation transformed into a centralized petrostate, modernizing its infrastructure, but at the cost of brutal repression. Gómez centralized the army, repressed dissent, paved roads, and opened oil concessions to foreign firms. The Pérez-Jiménez regime fell in 1958. The Punto Fijo Pact anchored party democracy for decades. In 1958, the Punto Fijo Pact between the then three main political parties AD, COPE, and URD was signed for the acceptance of the 1958 presidential elections and preservation of the new democratic system. A very welcomed approach to prevent future dictatorship. Spain imposed language and faith, enslaved and indigenous labor, then independence, remixed it all. For a decade, Bolívar led independence, 1811-1821. Then Gran Colombia split. Venezuela stood apart. By the 20th century, oil wealth surged, and the oil-dependent democracy paved the way, shaping a modern, urban society. However, the 1970s oil shocks propelled Venezuela into a massive economic boom, turning it into the wealthiest nation, nicknamed as the Saudi Venezuela huge pipelines. Refineries developed across the nation's landscape. Leveraging the economic strength, the government, led by Carlos Andrés Pérez, nationalized the iron and oil industries, creating the State Oil Company, PDVSA, built scale across the Orinoco Belt. Crisis cycles later reset everything. A constitution defines a federal presidential republic with executive, legislature, judiciary, and a unicameral National Assembly at the center. Today, politics are contested. Institutions and elections face pressure. Alliances shift between parties and movements over decades. Regional ties matter: trade, security, migration. Today's issues: contested elections and institutional independence under strain. Media constraints and civic space limits. Protests often face crackdowns. Judiciary politicization and disputed bans on opposition candidates. Corruption allegations and weak public services erode trust. Negotiations and international mediation seek credible competitive elections. Sanctions and policy choices compound humanitarian pressures and migration. Colombia, Brazil, Guyana, Essequibo. Economically, oil dominates and volatility bites. Heavy crude, refining, petrochemicals. Inflation and sanctions hurt, yet entrepreneurs and remittances keep activity moving. Headwinds, inflation and shortages, population outflows, currency instability, need to diversify and attract capital. Still, energy, renewables, fintech, cacao coffee, and tourism rebuild links to global markets. Who lives here? About 28 million people, mostly in cities: Caracas, Maracaibo, Valencia, Barquisimeto. Spanish is the official language with indigenous languages in some regions. The diaspora is large, but daily life remains proudly Venezuelan. Culture is where Venezuela breathes. Joropo Gaitas baseball street festivals, Caribbean coast, Tepuis Llanos Andes. The through line is oficio, craft, the devotion to doing one thing incredibly well. And the cuisine? Hearty, regional, and rooted in corn and beans. Arepas pabellon, criollo cacao, and coffee that travel the world. Halacas, cachapas, tequeños, fresh coastal seafood, and guava sweets. Even street corner food is joyfully good. Coast meets mountains, mountains guide cities, cities shape culture, culture shapes power, power reshapes the nation, then the world reshapes Venezuela. Understand that loop, and Venezuela stops being a paradox. It becomes a story that makes perfect sense.